Hello dear friends, I will tell you today an interesting story on how we developed our product and the challenges that we faced, and also how all that was rolled out. Now the story goes back years ago when we started our work, and my first work was developing mobile games for very old phones. I've always dreamt of developing shooters, but it so happened that in Minsk these type of games had never been developed. The only thing we had in Minsk is developing these devices, the games for these devices, and we found ourselves in small companies developing small games, and we faced the challenge of integrating a lot into 40 kilobytes and make it work on a mobile phone. It was a very interesting time where I met many people, many interesting people, and these people working on these projects are still working in our company with us today. In 2007, there was a milestone event where Steve Jobs announced the fabulous device which you see in the screen, and that was a breakthrough which was not understood at the time. Many did not treat that as happening, and our art director Dmitry was keen on Apple, he was keen on their devices, and he always was talking about Apple, showing their devices to us and telling us that it's a real breakthrough, a real disruption. And he managed to instill this idea into us, the idea of Apple. The development of mobile industry back there was rapid, and actually the milestone stage of that development was finished. Games for Windows Mobile, for JWE, were depleted, if I can say so. And at that moment of our story, we decided to finish developing games for these platforms. Back then, I was one of the managers of this team, and they told us that we need to fire half of our team. We decided not to do that. We decided to leave the company ourselves and set up a company of our own. We've been thinking about a name of the company for a very long time, and we didn't find a consensus, so we took the first letters from our first names and we got this name DAVA. Our startup sum was more than $5,000. We bought 3 iPhones and 3 MacBooks, and we started working. For iOS, it was not possible to develop anything back there, so we continued developing for Windows Mobile and JWE. So the iPhone was in its initial stage, and everyone was expecting what will happen further. There were some popular titles, but we managed to find our first customers and we started working. We had the first cash flow and everything moved smoothly. In March 2008 was the beginning of our project. In 2008 there was a crisis that you all remember, and actually, I don't know about other places, but our customers stopped paying us. Half of the companies in Minsk started firing people, started reducing their staff levels. They started closing their outsourcing subsidiaries and divisions, so everything was not that happy for all of us. At that time, there was already the App Store up and running, and that was a wonderful time for all of us. Despite of the crisis, our customers got back on track, and as for outsources, they faced a lot of challenges, but we actually had a chance to earn a lot of money. We were the only ones who developed games for mobile platforms, and I think probably there were only 10 studios like that in Minsk. So we started developing for iOS and later for Android. We drafted our first strategy. It was pretty simple. There were half of our team on outsourcing, and half of us were leading their own projects. The strategy was not quite long-term at that time, but for ourselves we decided to use higher bit rates at $30 per hour and more, and for the market we were presented on, it was quite easy to do that. We had a lot of customers and our team grew larger. Throughout these years we had many breakthroughs, a lot of success. Many outsourcers had lower rates. Our rates were $50 per hour and beyond, and we managed to develop wonderful products for many of our customers, and we also had some proprietary products which we developed. Our own products is an interesting story, is a funny story. In our company, there was the environment of total brainstorming. We generated new ideas all the time, and we started implementing the idea right after we decided it was okay. One of the first products was the ruler for the iPhone. We registered a company in the United States, but we couldn't set up a bank account there. When the App Store was launched, we wanted to test the releasing capacity of the App Store, but we didn't manage to send money to the American bank. So we came up with a fast idea and tried to release it as soon as possible. So we released our first app, the ruler, after 10 days since the App Store was launched. It rated a top app, and it remained there for 5 years. It turned out that doctors actually were our primary customers for this ruler, because they used this online ruler, this iPhone ruler, to check their X-ray shots. And we managed to save about $500,000 on banners and advertising within this app. This app was free of charge, and it remained free of charge until the end. For our products, we were kind of cautious. We tried to develop products that could find a niche in the market. One of the most successful products I can name is Recorder Pro, for example, which was one of the most successful recording apps in the App Store, and it was actually featured at one of the CBS shows. The app called The Watch was a very disruptive marketing step. We launched this app and we started generating cash flow. At some point, we wanted to rename the app from the iClock to Clock, and after we did that, we started generating a lot of profits from this app as well. There was one more app, which was the encyclopedia of modern weapons, and after that, after we released this app, Wargaming got interested in what we were doing. In average, there were 5 to 10 million of active users in our apps. And one day Victor came up to us and asked us how much money we earned. After that, he suggested paying us much more money, and of course we could not reject such a proposal. The key thing was that this project was a very interesting franchise product. We understood that tanks is a breakthrough product which can appear like one in every 10 years or even more rare. And we liked this opportunity to work on such an interesting product. We looked on the figures, we understood the profits that might be generated, which was incomparable with the mobile market. So the first idea we came up with was to take our mobile users and involve them in playing mobile tanks. The idea was not quite successful. About 0.5% of our users actually were converted to PC gamers, and there were very few of them paying customers. It was a failure, and we started thinking further. The next idea was on developing some other games. We understood that we would not be able to release a lot of games. Our studio included about 20 people or 25 people at the time, and we decided to prototype many games. After that, we wanted to select the best ones, and from them we could choose even better and make a final choice. So in the end, there were 2 prototypes. One of them was the sniper game, which was about shooting other tanks from a tank. And at that point, we were not thinking of developing a multiplayer game for mobiles. So initially we didn't have this idea. So the second project was the network game, the game from the top view where you operated a tank. You could draw the route for the tank and understand the direction of shooting. So these two prototypes, we have been developing them for some time, and we wanted them to also be released. And we also wanted to develop it further. We wanted to come up with a multiplayer with a common tank. And in a week we managed to prototype this game. There was a mobile game that involved tanks running and shooting. And we understood that it's a promising idea, it's a promising project. So there were two prototypes at the beginning. But at some point, with Andrei, who led the second project on the strategy, about the strategy game on tanks. So together we decided to work jointly. We decided to work on a single game. We wanted to have a 3D shooter, and we understood that for a 3D shooter we needed to adapt it to the mobile platform. I understood that it was a challenging platform to be deployed on mobile, so we decided to provide functionality to users who could operate the tank from the top. So we decided to unite these two concepts into a single project, and I will tell you more on how we did that. At the time, many people, almost all of our colleagues, were saying, we kept saying that the operation on mobile should be as simple as possible, and games should be as simple as possible as well. And all developers actually were developing platforms and games like that. It was a general concept for the mobile industry. At some point we understood that we were going to develop a game for virtual joysticks, with deep game mechanics and it will be a real-time PvP multiplayer game. We understood that playing against other users is a stress for many users, and we understood that it will not be a popular title in the military setting. So our game could look like that back there, but finally we developed something else, which you see also in the screen, which was more brutal actually. So our concept was that psychologically it was difficult for us to move forward with this project because our colleagues kept telling that we will not be successful, and many people did not believe in us, and no one actually believed that this idea can actually take off. But we thought that shooters were the most popular genre on the planet. All men, all people, at some point in their life played a shooter, and there are many popular shooter games that have been popular for many years among users. But our colleagues kept telling that mobile gamers are completely different. They have a completely different playing and gaming patterns. They told us that it was not possible to offer such a game, such a product for them. So the second point is that if we manage to develop a shooter, there will be a technological advantage ahead of us. So back then we thought about this technological advantage, we thought about this in simple terms, and we also visited training at Stanford, and they showed us this slide at Stanford. If you develop a game and if you want to have a sustainable competitive advantage, if you manage to do that, your rivals will not be able to reach you for a long time. And after we released our project, our competitors needed 4 years to catch up with us. Our global purpose was to develop the first shooter for mobile platforms, which will be a convenient game to play. We wanted to have a convenient shooter for users. And we understood that if we were a success, gamers would like our idea, because gamers liked playing shooters in general. But we thought about the design on how to develop such a game, and we started thinking further. If we have such a chart where we have the pace, which is a rate or tempo of the game, there we have the simplicity of controlling the game. And if you look at the bottom part, we need such a game that it should be sufficiently slow and easy to control. Tanks could be a sustainable option, and the main challenge actually was to control the control. There were two global challenges actually. We were thinking how to integrate virtual stick controls and complex game mechanics that were in tanks. At the time, we had the prototype with virtual joysticks, with several buttons, with a wheel which you could use to zoom in and to zoom out, and there were many controllers on the screen. When we showed it to one of the respectful designers of Wargaming, he tried it, he played it, and he said that you need to be a Spider-Man to be able to play this game. And after that we developed the game further. We spent 8 months prototyping controls, and we wrote, I think, about 18 options, 18 variants of virtual controls with buttons. We developed different options on how buttons can work. As for the camera, I think for camera we had even more prototypes regarding the work and the operation of cameras inside the game. It was an interesting time for all of us, but it was also a challenging period. Since that time, I have had some takeaways. First of all, you need to systematize your prototyping. If you try to find a new idea, you should try to have some system, some framework for your ideas. You also need to listen carefully, to listen to people you work with. Me and my colleagues spent a lot of time. We were fighting. We were always quarreling, and it was psychologically it was also not quite easy. Play your game every day is also important. We played our game together every day, and we shared our impressions and feedback. After that, these gaming sessions and the results of these gaming sessions were actually the basis for our daily process, for our daily work process. If we develop a feature, we always test it. We share impressions inside the team and discuss pros and cons, gaps and strengths. I like these charts which you see in the screen, and recently I've always been trying to use such charts for our projects. Back then we prototyped the controls in the game, and actually the depth of the gameplay which we want to have was taken from the tank game. We wanted to have an easy control of the game for users to be able to play the game as easy as possible, and we wanted to also to keep the same depth of the gameplay. If you lose interest to the game with time, you tend to switch to some other game very often. And at some point we understood that we needed to find something that will be easy but will not affect the gameplay. So you see that we were looking for something in this zone which you see in the screen in the chart. So we wanted easy controls and good depth. But of course, in real life, it's a rare thing. So we decided to select something in favor of the deep gameplay. Just an example, there were many prototypes with us where we had the camera and the targeting mechanism which worked automatically. You used the joysticks and the tank was actually targeting the aim itself. So it was pretty easy, it was casual, but at the same time, after we understood that this game lacks the mechanics of shooting, the mechanics of selecting a point, selecting a dot and shooting into it, and have this and enjoy this gameplay, enjoy this shooting. So we actually lost the shooting concept. At some point, one of our game designers kept telling that we needed to basically develop the shooter, not the casual game, and I think that was a very fair idea. I also think that any categorization system is better than no system. If you don't try to categorize your ideas, you may face a challenging situation when you can make a mistake and be biased. You develop a hypothesis, and you're trying to look for variants to confirm your suggestion. And you always need to think about what you're prototyping, what you're doing. So this is an interesting period of our activity. When we were prototyping, there were rivals appearing in the market. In this market, there were shooters already before us, but the shooters similar to us were not quite spread. At that moment, we had 6 to 8 months before the release. There were many rivals, some rivals. Dead Trigger, for example, was a shooter game which was quite popular for mobile platforms. It was a fast game, and when we were in the beginning of the project, we were focused on the Dead Trigger and we wanted to beat them up.
Because they're fast and they're hard to play. Then there's Iron Force. They were like sort of toy tanks. They're running on just in a flat space, and it was quite popular. It still makes $1 million a month. So at the time, I was making about the same amount of money. So we were thinking that perhaps, sure, if we improve this game and make it deeper, we'll be able to make more money. And then a competitor came around, it was called Tank Domination, because that's the people who made the game we wanted to make. And everyone kept saying, okay guys, you're done. You're done. You're out of time. You failed. You're going to be released in 8 months. They're going to take your market share. That's it. But we didn't give up. We stayed strong, and let me tell you why. When we started thinking about what we were doing, we were drawing up some thoughts we were thinking. They were diagrammed like this. If we talk about control, we were thinking about a game that would be better, have better controls than in Tank Domination or Dead Trigger. We played Iron Force, but it wasn't deep enough. In the visuals, we were #1 for sure, because we worked a lot to make, the number one prime content. When it came to depth, we're also pretty far away from any of those games. And we talk about pace, it was pretty slow. And even though Tank Domination was also pretty slow, and all other parameters, they would all lose to us. When we talk about monetizing, we looked at all of those games. If we make aggressive monetization, we most likely are gonna win in the short term, but would lose long term. So we decided to make a bet on a very soft monetization, so people will be able to play. Basically, our games can be played for free, but we don't have very aggressive barriers for people to, quickly purchase things. So when you're looking at a picture like this, you understand you're going to make a game that is going to precede your competitors in many parameters. And if that's the picture you got, then keep calm and carry on. because the winner takes it all. We've seen it 100 times in a mobile market, PC market, console market, a game that by all technical competitors exceeds others. It is always ultimately going to take its niche and takes its audience. Further on, we finally made a game and we decided that we gotta release it. But back then, the mobile market, this soft launch idea wasn't very popular. A few people did it. And within Wargaming company, they had the practice of beta testing. So we were asked, hey guys, you can't go to soft launch, you gotta do a beta test. But there was no technical chance to make beta test, so we thought we're gonna cheat a little bit. We had access to enterprise program of Apple, we did a build, we signed it with an enterprise certificate, put it up on the portal, and then quietly in our news blog we wrote like, here we are, running a beta test. The very first day we had 90,000 downloads, and then the news went all over the internet. We did not see this coming, and then the next day we got a call from Apple and asked us a question. Our beta test was done. So we're deciding the beta testing didn't work. What are we gonna do? Let's launch at some region. Where we'll be able to test the way things work. So we chose Scandinavia. As a region where we are going to launch. So we did launch, and that was our breakdown. We had a clue that the Russians were going to come, but the Chinese, they really shocked us. Soft launch in general was very good. We got a lot of positive feedback, and we saw that people are playing our game, they're liking our game. So we started to look at numbers. We looked at the funnel first. So we had of the 100% coming in, 80% got registered, and 60% came to tier 2. That was terrible. And the registration at the time was pretty simple. So for the players who could play through Game Center, it was a one-click registration. But we still lost 20% of the audience. So 20% of the audience did not have a Game Center installed. It was pretty sad for us. So we decided to optimize the funnel. And it's important to say that Andrei, our development director, he said, it's the most important problem we got. We have to make sure that the funnel is corrected. So we made an enormous patch, the mega patch, where we added lots of features, and all those features helped us, really fix the funnel. First, we made a guest account. So like in this large build, the person first gets into the guest account. It was just one click to start the game without any Facebook registrations or whatever. So the automatic percentage of registration went up to 100. Then was game tutorial, where he'd learn how to drive, how to shoot, how to use various features in the games. And then he'd get into the garage. And the garage is this complicated place with like lots of buttons. So we've added garage tutorial. So where would be, adding buttons one after another, so the user is not that scared when they get into that garage. And then we'll give 5 battles with bots. So he feels like he's a devastator. And he'd play a few battles with people and then a few with the bots, and then afterwards he'd get in line where he'd play just with the beginners, because we have this game, you know, these old folks, you know, who, you know, have big, large tanks. They come to the first level and, you know, like to do massacre in the sandpit. And then we made a separate line for them, and then we had a percentage of players coming into tier 2 who would upgrade to second tier tank. It went up to 97%. So basically, when we fixed the funnel problem, afterwards we kept analyzing as to how users live in our game, and we had lots of places where, you know, users would be lost. Like they'd be lost on level 5 because they started to get into battles with level 7, and it was so difficult. And at some point we made a lot of changes to make sure that the graph of users losing the game would be much smoother. The engine, I haven't spoken about it yet, but at the time as we were starting the game, we understood, but at that time, that the technology that allows us to make the game we wanted to make, they just weren't out there. Unity couldn't allow us at the time to make the game with open landscapes, map that's kilometer by kilometer, and also launch them on low-end devices. Real Engine at the time was just the third one, so there was no fourth one. It was the same problem. So we made a decision that we have to build our own technology. And the idea, as in short-term and long-term perspective, it was justified. Because the engine became our huge competitive advantage. And at first it appeared that the investment to create your own engine is very expensive, it hurts, it's difficult. But as we started to access the Android market, we realized it's all gonna pay off, because our technology was optimized for our game. The game worked smoothly even on low-end devices. Today, one can think that a low-end device, who the hell's gonna want a low-end device? And now you take Unity and Real Engine, do all that, and a lot of companies do that. But even today, according to our estimates, we recently made an estimate how much low-end devices take up, starting with iPad 2 and below, including all of the Androids. It's 10 to 15% of our all profit on the project. So whoever doesn't target a low-end device lose 10 to 15%. But those low-end devices, they aren't going anywhere. I can guarantee there's markets like India that just starts merging. There's China, where low-end devices make up a huge share of the market. So if you understand that you want to squeeze maximum out of your product, I recommend optimizing and squeeze it down to every drop, including low-end. But most importantly, it's the technology that allows us to control what we make. So we can design any features, we can go to any platforms we want, so we can do whatever we want. So what have we done? We use the term as non-consensus strategy. So we follow the path that everybody thought was wrong. That in the modern world, many believe that when you're going along the path that everybody thinks is wrong, most likely, if you're not going to fail, you're going to reach huge success. Why is that? Because nobody's going there apart from you. It most likely is going to be an empty market, and if it exists, then you're just going to grab it. And many investment firms today Because investment firms have committees who get there and discuss, and many investment firms, investment funds, they have a pattern that if everyone agrees the idea is good, they're not going to invest in it, because most likely it's an evident idea and everybody's going to do it. So we found a new market, and the new market turned out to be pretty big, and we've proven to everyone that PvP games on mobile devices is a real moneymaker. It's a huge and interesting opportunity, and today, you know, Gunzo Boom, Battle Bay, Pixel Gun, War Robots are following our footsteps. They're wonderful projects. They're shooters too. They're very well done by great teams, and they live very well in this market. So the potential of the market is enormous. So basically, to wrap things up, I kept thinking, well, what do I say in conclusion? But I want to quote Winston Churchill: "Success is a movement from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm." Don't give up. If the next failure is coming over you, just stop for a moment, think, and keep moving on. And as Aristotle used to say, secret of success is knowing what nobody else knows. Just a few, these are a few links to the resources that I like. Bill Barnett from Stanford, he's a professor that wrote notes about strategy. He teaches a course in Stanford Business School. And he writes a lot about consensus, non-consensus strategy, and he thinks a lot on the strategy. I'll link to our engine. It's an open source engine we got if anybody wants to build a shooter game and you decide that you're ready to take a risk and not Unity or Unreal Engine. You're welcome. What Blitz? And now it's time for Q&A. Thank you, Vitaliy. Vitaliy, I got a question. So if we talk about the most notable failure that pushed the project to the next level, the failure you analyze and you're like, okay, oh yeah, awesome, we're doing this now. What was the push, or was it like a number of improvements that you decided along the way? Well, like I told you, you know, there were very few people that believed in this project in the first place. So the consensus used to say it was going to be a failed project and it's not going to take off. So we had plenty of failures, but it's like sort of an internal process that, you know, I really don't feel like talking about. But the greatest luck that we had is that we had Victor Kisley, who believed in our project. And his previous experience was when he was making tanks. It was the same idea. He was building a project that nobody believed in. Now everybody said, tanks are not going to take off. People are going to have an emotional attachment to the character you drive and many other reasons. But despite this, he made this project and he was very successful. So I would say Victor, and that's the force of the team. Because the team was always sort of victory-oriented. We worked tightly together. Everybody believed in them. Because yes, there were times when it's really difficult. Good morning. Now, how many people did it take to design the Blitz? Right now, the design team is about 150 people. So from 25 to 150 in 5 years. I had a few presentations about that and different presentations, like on GDC and stuff. As we were growing, as our processes evolved, because in order to grow from 25 to 150 and not break along the way, you got to do, you know, lots of due diligence. So if you're interested, you can check out my presentation. There are some noteworthy things that can help you during your day-to-day processes to improve them. Vitaliy, don't you think you just got lucky? You know, Victor's gonna say, "Hey, Vitaliy, make another breakthrough of similar size." Aren't you gonna be scared? I'm asking because the world industrial practice, you know, it doesn't have any examples of repetition of such ideas. You know, Mahjong didn't come up with anything like the Minecraft, and Riot Games is holding on to League of Legends. Because you're saying, you know, about there's a strategy, and we thought, because I feel you just got lucky. Well, there's a few things I want to tell you. First, is that, of course, nobody can guarantee any success. If we're going to be able to make the second successful project, it's a question. I don't know. Are we going to be able to do a project that's going to be better than Blitz? It's a question. But I can tell you for sure, if you take a team of professionals and you're going to work understanding where you're going, then the chance of you getting to where you want to get is much higher. The chance of you doing a quality product is much higher. So, of course, guarantees, nobody going to give you any guarantees. But my thinking is, there's also a quote, I don't remember who's it from, but the optimists make the future and pessimists just watch. They're just the audience. So if you believe in yourself, if you believe in your idea, if you believe in what other people don't believe in, I believe you're going to make it.
Есть еще вопросы, да? Добрый день.
Good morning. In brief, could you list a few mistakes that you made? Because right now it looks like, I was walking through the woods and I found a wallet. So if you want to find a wallet, keep walking through the woods. Well, of course we had mistakes. At first, you know, we tried to convert users. We tried to build prototypes that weren't successful. Let me tell about a few mistakes. So at stage 1, it felt like making a shooter on mobile devices. Yeah, sure, it's complicated, but it's not impossible. And at one point, as we tested controls, we did a lot of focus tests. And during those focus tests, we saw reactions of different people. And when a person who never played a shooter on a mobile device takes an iPad and tries to play a game that has a virtual joystick and have to manipulate the cameras, have to shoot, have to press all those buttons, sometimes it looked just awful. And we wanted, at that moment in time, we just wanted to simplify everything, just make the controls that would be so intuitive just for anybody. Anybody literally can pick it up and go. And we came up with some mad control system. We had this auto, basically the auto, pretty much an auto shooter. So it was basically you could use slides to shift between your targets. So building prototypes and experimenting, we saw that we're losing the essence of our game. We're losing the point of what we gathered to do. So in my opinion, the mistake we never did is that we never went into trusting the opinion of the user or trusting the opinion of the experts at the time. We just believed in our own ideas. We believed that the shooter is a popular genre, that it's possible to do, and people would want to play that. The design process had a ton of mistakes. You know, sometimes we released updates and our crash rates went from 99.9 to 60. When we released a feature, but the users thought that, okay, now we're done with the game. But all of these difficulties, we analyzed them. We thought, well, what do we want to get in the end? And we kept moving on. There's a secret slide. So, random marketing. So at some point, working with a publisher, okay, push notifications don't work. You build it and they don't work. I said, well, we did push notification. Nothing's happening. And at some point, one of our testers makes a mistake and launches worldwide, not to the tester, but to everyone, but to the whole world. Test 2. And on Wednesday at lunch, we get a spike on 20,000 users. So forecasting how our users are going to react 100%, you can't do that. So there are questions of luck. Of course, there's luck. But what we did to get to the result, we overcame lots of difficulties on various stages.
We have many great people here at 4C today, and here's one of them. Hi, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Alexander Markovic. I am Creative Director at Ministry of Games, and I'm here to talk about city building games and design principles of those.
Nice. Do you remember your very first video game that you've played?
Sure, it was The Prince of Persia back in something like 89 or whatever it would have been. Yes.
It's a great game back in the day and still. What's your favorite game of all time today?
I guess I like mobile games, so at the moment I think my favorite game would be probably something like Brawl Stars or Clash Royale, so Supercell PvP titles, or on the other hand some city building titles like Township.
What do you think about the state of modern video game industry overall?
Well, I guess there is a lot happening at the moment, which is awesome. The core games are doing awesome stuff, the casual games are doing awesome stuff, so I think it is awesome that inclusion is happening on all sides, right?
Anything that maybe irritates or saddens you, something that you don't like in the state of game dev today?
Well, the only thing that might sadden us is the sometimes there is a bit of lack of inclusion happening, and sometimes there is a certain amount of kind of toxic behavior that occurs in the gaming circles. But other than that, I think it is just moving in the awesome direction.
Well, it is moving in an awesome direction, and we're here to try and foresee it. Speaking of which, what do you see happening in the industry in like a 10 years' time? What will be the new thing, the new trend, do you think?
Well, hopefully the mobile games stay relevant, right? But other than that, obviously AR and geolocation games are super interesting, and stuff that's happening with that is super exciting, and also hopefully as things move forward, we get more inclusive or like more engaged worlds that we kind of play together with each other. And I think this is something that we're hopefully moving towards too.
Well, you're part of the industry, you can help move it forward. Speaking of which, how did you end up in the industry? How did you come here?
Well, I guess as anyone else, I just kind of liked the whole idea of the escapism of the games that was offered to us as we were young, and I just kind of stick with them throughout my youth, and it was a logical choice growing older, right?
What's more important for you in games that you like graphics, storytelling, the gameplay, or maybe a combination?
I guess in the end, for me, it comes back to the community and kind of the shared experience of playing the games. So it is in the end about kind of multiplayer of it.
What about the single-player games then?
Which are also awesome. There is nothing about games that is not awesome, right? So single-player games also cool. Whatever story-driven RPGs, story-driven text-adventure games. There is nothing to dislike in those either, but for me, just kind of the multiplayer experience is something that drives the medium forward into kind of this new, less explored areas of just kind of playing with your, children or with your parents or with your grandparents. Why not? And I guess this is something that just excites me.
So the future is in multiplayer and socializing in games. Is that right for you?
Well, I hope it is I guess what I'm saying.
Well, we can move it over there. St. Pete, we're here today. What do you think about the city?
A beautiful city, repeat. Awesome times to be had all around, and I'm glad to be here. Thankful for the opportunity.
Glad to have you here. Also surprised you know the cult song about St. Pete. What about the conference? I know it's the first day, but what are your impressions so far? Maybe expectations?
Well, I've met some awesome people all around. I'm looking forward to hearing their talks, to hearing their thoughts on the future of gaming and the future of the industry, and have high hopes.
Any specific speech you're maybe looking forward to? Somebody you want to listen to?
So there is, for example, the Greg Street, the design director of League of Legends, will be talking about using user feedback to improve your game design. So this is something that, for example, I'm very interested in. And also anything from game design track is something that appeals to me very much.
Well, hope you find it useful. And finally, if you were standing here in my place interviewing yourself, what question would you ask yourself?
Whoa, not sure at all.
I guess you have all the answers then.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I hope you find more answers here on 4C, and thank you very much, and have a nice time.
Thank you.
So we've prepared a few questions for one of our speakers. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ville Rauma from Fingersoft, Finland. So, yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Please tell me, what's the first game you have ever played, the video game?
I think that would probably be maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator 3. And
It was your very first, right?
yeah.
All right. Which one is your favorite today?
Right now, basically, Divinity Original Sin 2 is like really awesome.
It's amazing. I gotta agree with you there. And what led you to the gaming industry? How did you start?
Well, basically, I was studying in University of Oulu, and we had a training period where you go to a company, and there happened to be a game company in the list where you can pick where you want to go, and I was like, yeah, I want to go there. So that's how I got started.
So they just took you in?
Yeah, because it's like the companies kind of volunteer that we'll take trainees from the university, so you can kind of pick where you want to go. So yeah.
Sounds great. So what is your favorite thing about the video game industry today?
Well, I don't know. It's like it's really hectic, and it's quite kind of free kind of environment where people can really be, who they are, and it's kind of laid back. So I think that's pretty cool.
It generally is. But are there maybe things that make you mad or sad in the today's state of gaming industry?
Well, I don't know. Like, it's difficult to say. Sometimes there are things, but nothing pops to mind right now. Like maybe sometimes like especially like huge studios kind of focus on single thing. You know how it is. Like sometimes there's only World War II games, and next you have only like future mech games or whatever. So it's like always these big trends and less about like innovation and new type of games. So maybe that.
Speaking of trends, do you see any trend surfacing in 10 years or so? How do you view the gaming industry in the nearest future?
Well, long term, like 10 years, I think probably there's gonna be big changes. Like of course VR, AR are big, but right now they're like really new stuff. So it's not really like a big business opportunity right now. But that's probably gonna be big in the future. I think it's gonna take a few years. But yeah, at least that.
So you feel like technologies are going to be the game changer here?
Well, at least with VR and AR, I feel like the experience is so awesome that when you do that, everybody who tries it thinks it's awesome. But right now, it's just too cumbersome and complicated to do. So I think that's the biggest issue there. But yeah, also of course, there's going to be probably like different trends in the way games, like the kind of like the free-to-play model right now, how it is, probably will change. It's always changing. So yeah.
That's true. But speaking experiences, what do you think is more important in a game? Like the age-old question: is it the graphics? Is it the gameplay? The storytelling?
Gameplay, of course. Yeah.
The simplest question of all. Okay. So what do you think about St. Petersburg?
I love it so far. It's the first time actually for me in Russia and in St. Petersburg, so yeah.
And what about the conference?
Yeah, it's looking really awesome. It's like well organized, so I like it.
What was the best question you were asked so far?
I don't know which game you are playing right now, of course, because I'm waiting to go back home so I can continue playing.
I completely understand you there. But which question would you ask yourself if you were interviewing yourself?
Oh, that's a hard one. What's going to be your next game? And I couldn't answer right now because we are working on a lot of prototypes and we'll see what it's going to be. But yeah.
Great. Are you looking forward to any specific presentation? Which do you want to listen to most?
Yeah, I did mark a few. I don't remember the titles right now, but they were like interesting because there's a lot of like really cool people here who know like a lot about a lot of things. So yeah, I think for me maybe on the kind of leadership business track is maybe the most kind of interesting for me right now because that's my job. So yeah.
Well, you're one of the cool people here, so thank you for coming and thank you for being a part of this.